Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Rock Your Shine After You Have Been Cracked Wide Open. Today, we have with us Emilie Faith, and she has dabbled in lots of different things in her professional life. And where she is now is a professional karaoke singer. We're going to delve deeply into Emilie's story of her journey to self discovery with a 2 year marriage that was very tumultuous and traumatic, and how it has actually transformed her life. She has a favorite quote by Kafka that feels like it summarizes who she is: more like a transparent, paradoxically iridescent creature rather than an actual person, which I love, Emilie, and I cannot wait for you to sort of open up with why you feel like that quote describes you. So let's start there and then we'll jump into your story. How does that sound?
Sounds great. I hope you like wild stories and that are all over the place because I like to jump around, but it'll be fun.
I love wild stories.
So I think probably one of the earliest parts of what makes a lot of who I am today starts from when I was younger, maybe like 11, 12, just starting to become a woman and all of that. And physically, I changed very quickly compared to other girls. I was sexualized from a very, very young age. So I had a lot of like body dysmorphia issues, not so much where I didn't think I was good looking, but that I didn't feel like I was in myself. So that's kind of why I feel like a creature, like a rather than an actual person. I think that we're more spiritual than we are actually people. And I think that's really interesting to think about and expand with. And that started a lot of who I was. So the dysmorphia I felt from all of that growing up really segued a lot into those issues that I still carry with me today. With all my weight gain and loss, that's really been a big part of my life. And being seen again, that obviously transforms into a physical way too. But then after my marriage, I went and I got things pierced, and it really changed a lot of my life. And for some people, maybe that's like not their cup of tea, which is totally cool. But for me, it was a lot of reclaiming my body and feeling comfortable with myself and feeling beautiful again. And the way kind of Marilyn Monroe was like, where she felt, you really need to embrace your sexuality. That's a part of who you are. And sexuality is creativity.
Yes. They're the
Anyway,
same energy, as a matter of fact. Sexual
yes,
energy and creative energy
yeah,
are, yes.
absolutely, for sure. So flirtatious people are creative people, 100%. So that's a big part of who I am. Now, other parts professionally, I was a funeral director from a really, really young age. And that was interesting and its own kind of field. And then I started moving out of that and started working into the flower field, which transformed me into working into weddings after I had met my husband for the first time. So when we met initially, there was some red flags, but you think to yourself, oh, I'm not that serious. So whatever, it's someone to hang out with on Saturday and go to the movies with and whatever. You don't really involve yourself too much in thoughts with it.
But I want to,
Um,
can I slow us down just a little bit? Because I feel
yeah,
like it's really important when you talk about body dysmorphia and the weight gain and loss, which I know we're going to delve more deeply into. Are we talking about eating disorders here, though, right? I mean, that's when I think of, so I don't know if that was your situation, but is that what you were alluding to? I could not tell.
yeah, I think for a long time I didn't realize it, and now as an adult, I definitely see a lot more signs of like anorexia and stuff when I'm feeling that way. And
Hmm.
even when you get dressed in the morning, if you put on something different that's not normal, like I wear the same thing every day. I always wear a black tank top, belly top with some leggings. I have like a uniform. Everybody knows me for it, and that has a lot to do with those feelings for sure.
Okay. Okay. It's because I think it's important for our listeners and for me to know too the kind of headspace you were in when you entered into this relationship. How were you? Did you ever get therapy or anything prior to this relationship for, your body dysmorphia, the way that you felt about yourself, or no?
No, I knew that I had underlying mental health issues already when I was younger. I was diagnosed with bipolar. And so now looking back, I'm definitely able to see the kinds of phases and stuff I was in. And when I met my ex-husband, I would have definitely been like in a manic phase, and that would have had a lot to do with my body and stuff too.
Okay, great. So you meet your husband, and how are you feeling about yourself at this point when you enter into that relationship with him?
Yeah.
Had you been in and out of relationships? Was that part of your life?
So I was always in like long-term relationships. My first boyfriend I was with from 15 to 23. So we were together for 8 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
then right after him, I was with someone else for 3 years, and that just went different ways. And so I think at that point, I was really just not interested in being with anybody anymore. And I was in a mindset that I just wanted to have a career. I didn't want to have kids. I didn't want to be married. I
Okay.
wanted to work my 12-hour days. That's what I wanted.
Okay, so you meet this guy, and he's someone just to hang out with for a while. What happens?
Yeah. So then I found out I was pregnant. And so I had to tell him, obviously. And so we went through that together. And then things really got worse pretty much right when he moved in. It was a lot of things changing a lot. So it was probably a lot to do with me feeling territorial, like thinking about having all these multicolored Christmas lights in my house, like sent me out for a week. I was so upset thinking about all these lights, and I just wanted to have my normal Christmas setup. But I was also 8 months pregnant. So,
And
I was
how long were you dating before you got pregnant?
like right away. It was
Okay.
not.
Okay. So it was a big oops. When
Yeah. And I mean, for my whole life, I had always been very structured, always did the right thing, working all the time, boyfriend of 8 years. Like, I never had problems before. It just was meant to happen. So, anyways, like, then things like got worse with really silly things. It started with like, I didn't want to watch this one movie because I didn't believe in the energy that it was sending out into the world. I think that the things that you say and think are really important, and the movies that you watch and support are important too. So I didn't want to watch this movie for my own beliefs. Who cares? And he did not love that. And it was a really big fight. And right then is when I should have recognized a lot of control issues, and I should have left then. Then it started segueing into like when I was on mat leave, which was also really quick, obviously, that money started being controlled a lot. Like I couldn't work, like I didn't have any clothes. I had lost a lot of weight and I had no clothes, and he wouldn't want to share expenses on things like that. And so that segued a lot of really big fights. Then it started being like, oh, you want to go in the shower because you're mad? Well, I'm going to turn the shower off and like yell at you naked in the shower, or like, barricading closet doors. And one time I tried to leave, and then he wrapped his arms around me like in a bear hug. And he's much bigger than me. I'm only 5 feet, and he's like 6'3", 250 pounds plus. Like he's a big guy, and I'm a small girl. So that was probably one of the scariest moments that I had because it reminded me a lot of childhood things that had happened. And in that moment, you just like feel really small. And like I felt like a little kid again when that happened. And my son was in the other rooms. And then it was kind of scary thinking, like, oh, I can't get to him. And like you just have all these like floods of thoughts that are coming through your head. So then I don't know how my mom ended up finding out that something was going on, but she had lived a couple floors up in the same apartment building. And so she came downstairs, and I left with her and with the baby. But I don't really remember a lot of parts of that outside of being held and then my mom walking away and him yelling down the hallway at me. So it was a lot of things like that. It was, not letting me sleep at night. Like he would pick late nights to argue on purpose.
yeah, start fights.
Yeah. And then it was a lot of like, not seeing my friends anymore. He was very jealous of the relationship I had with my mom. We were really close. So like she would call and be like, oh, do you want a coffee on the way home? And like that would send him off. Like he would hate that. But because he was struggling with his own issues of whatever he was feeling.
And this is still a new relationship. I mean, you're in a relationship, you've got a baby, you're young. Where is his family? Does he have friends? Does he have family? Like, because I can certainly understand you chose to keep this child, right? You're still getting to know this person that you're in this new relationship with and bringing a child into it. I mean, just all of those things are a recipe for a very challenging time anyway, even if you're both the best people, evolved people in the world. But do you know, I mean, as all of these things are happening, have you met his family?
Yeah, so I met them when I was pregnant, which was super not awkward at all. But like they were fine in the beginning. We all got along pretty good. He had had past issues with his family that I had known about, but who doesn't? So we would go sometimes to visit them. His mom lives pretty far away, but they would never want to be around. There was no emotional support. Like they wouldn't babysit for us. There was no kind of support like that. Like nobody was calling to see how people were doing. Nobody was coming to birthday parties, no matter how many excuses we would solve for them. Like nobody wanted to be there. But my family was there a lot.
All right, so now this night he's yelling, you take the baby, you go to your mother's.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling that's not the end of this relationship.
Yeah. It was like a lot of arguments that turned out almost exactly like that. I called the police once so that they would let me leave the house. And then after that, they let me leave with the baby again, with them being there, but they didn't make me press charges. And I really, 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 really wish that they had. And I wish that I had had more outreach at that point, because I think that things just ended up getting a lot worse from then on. And like even now, like no matter how much I've reached out to the people you're supposed to, like you don't get the help that you need.
Mm.
And so that was really hard for a long time. So we left, and then like children's aid gets involved at that point too, like just to come check and make sure everything's okay, because things were happening in the house.
Is Children's Aid, is that the same as the Department of, like DHS, Department of Human Services? Is that what you're talking about when you?
So yeah, like it would be like CPS and like
Okay, yeah, Child Protective. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
so like they come and they ask questions and all of that, because the cops got called, and Andrew made that a lot worse too, because he was like, oh, we'll see what can of worms you opened up now. And like when I would try to reach out for help, it would be like obviously I would get it so much worse from him.
From him. Yeah.
So then I can't remember. I think I was at a wedding or something. I was working a wedding, which would be really late nights for me. Like I would start sometimes at 7 in the morning and honestly not leave until 2 in the morning. Like these were crazy, crazy sick days, which was another really big part of my world. So I came home and it's like 2 in the morning, and there's still food all over the high chair, and like he just like didn't like clean up properly at the end of the night. And you live in a building, you want to make sure you're not getting bugs. And so it wasn't cleaned after like a 2-year-old was eating macaroni like all over the place, so you can imagine. So I came in and I said, like, it's late, I'm just gonna go sleep on the couch tonight, like I'm tired. I didn't want to stay in bed and stew and all that. I just wanted to go lay on the couch, watch TV, and go to sleep. And then he started yelling at me, and then I started getting into a fight about all of that, and him telling me that I didn't do anything all day. And then any new mom can tell you that staying home with a kid on mat leave is so much harder than any job I've ever experienced in my life. So we started fighting about that, and then he was putting his chest in my face. And again, like I was pretty short, so like when I'm standing, my face is right in his chest. And in all of the chaos, I ended up slapping him, and I don't deny it. And it's not something I ever denied. Like I hit him because I felt threatened in that moment. So anyway, so actually he ended up going and calling the cops on me, and I got arrested and had to work really, really hard to get the charges dropped. And even when I went to the police station that night, they were very much like, they knew that it was unreal, the circumstances, but because he had gone into the police station, there's a different type.
They had to do right. Yes.
It was horrible. So then I went through all of that, and obviously all of that was very traumatic. And there were things like, we couldn't talk to each other. So even lining up things with my son was hard, because we would have to talk through my mom, and then she was having problems with him too. So it was just a whole circle. So then after that, he basically put me into a corner position where he said, if you come back to me, like I'll make sure all of this goes away. So in my head, I'm thinking like, great, like I'm going to go do that. Let's be done with this. And then I can just start moving forward. So then he put forth that, like, he wanted to go to couples counseling. And I thought, okay, like, what's another year? If I say, okay, at the end of this year, next year, we're not in a better place, then we're going to have to agree that we're going to part our separate ways and just be done with this. And if it works, then great. So I agreed to do that. And then by the end of that year, he still hadn't gone through any of the things to make that happen through his work and his benefits, etc. Then COVID happened, which was its own set of challenges. I had so much going on with wedding planning and the wedding world that I couldn't really put proper focus into my personal life to handle what I was going through. So then we were in this like weird dating limbo for a long time. And then fights were getting worse.
But so now you're in lockdown with him, right? Because when COVID hit, everything was shut down, including all the weddings. So now are you unemployed at this point, and the two of you are holed up together in this apartment with your baby?
So he technically didn't live with me at that time, but he would come visit a lot, obviously, because he would have to pick up our son and all of that.
So you guys had split up at this point.
Yeah. So when the cops pulled him out, like that year prior, he was out of the house and had his own apartment after that point.
Okay.
And then at the end of that year, he still hadn't gone through to make the counseling happen. So now it's a year later and still nothing's happened. And now COVID happens and there's no therapist that can see you in person anyways.
Right.
So then we go through that whole second year in this weird dating limbo. And then because things are, just getting worse, and I knew that I didn't want to move back in with him. I knew that I wasn't ready to face things that we had faced. And like, I knew it was going to move forward. So I sat down with him in the car one night and I said, I booked a mediator. Like, I paid for a lawyer, like a mediator, to sit with us because I wanted a safe person to not let him put me in a corner where I felt manipulated or cornered into going back with him. I just wanted to say, like, we're done. Let's move forward, and then walk away separately and be done with it at that point. But then when we went to this mediators meeting, he ended up working with my ex to convince me to go through with the counseling again. So now it's like, oh my God, going into another year of this maybe. So because I felt like, what am I going to do? I have these two people telling me this. I'm going to have to agree to this. So I lose the $1,000 on that meeting for absolutely nothing, which was terrible. And then we go to this therapist meeting. So when we first went to go see the counselor, she's just asking us questions, trying to get to know us. She's watching how we're interacting. And then at the end of the meeting, she says, okay, well, we're going to have to do 2 solo meetings as well before we move forth with another together one. So when I went to go have my meeting with her, the questions that she was asking me and stuff, like, I kind of knew where she was heading with it. And, I was telling her things that I was scared about. And then I told her, like, I don't think Andrew would kill me or anything like that. And she says, well, like, that can't be a standard for a relationship. Like, and like, obviously, but I guess I had been justifying it like that for a long time, that like, oh, well, like, I don't really think he'll really hurt me, but like, that's not healthy. And even if you have that slight thought where you even have to question that, then it's probably not a good thing either.
And it's a pretty low bar, right, of expectation, like, oh, well, I'm not in danger of being killed. But I think that is such a huge red flag, or just not even a red flag, but just an indicator of where you were in your own headspace. Because I keep going back to you being this, first of all, you didn't want children, and now you've got the baby, right? You decided to keep this child, and you're trying to navigate motherhood. You've got this abusive relationship that you're trying to get out of your life, and we're in the midst of a global pandemic. That's a lot to juggle.
Mm-hmm.
Any one of those things are hard to juggle. And I'm just astounded that you were somehow holding it together through such an incredibly confusing, painful, and scary time. I'd like to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring this ad. Hey guys, I want to take a minute to offer an opportunity for those of you who've been searching for a mental health therapist and haven't had any luck getting callbacks. I know it's challenging to find help, so I've partnered with BetterHelp. They are the world's largest therapy service, and they are 100% online. With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues. To get started, you just answer a few questions about your needs and preferences in therapy. That way, BetterHelp can match you with the right therapist from their network. Then you can talk to your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether it's via text, chat, phone, or video call. You can message a therapist at any time and schedule live sessions when it's convenient for you. If your therapist isn't the right fit for any reason, you can switch to a new therapist at no additional charge. With BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism and quality you'd expect from in-office therapy, but with a therapist who is custom-picked for you. More scheduling flexibility at a more affordable price. Get 10% off right now on your first month at betterhelp.com/rockyourshine. That's betterhelp.com/rockyourshine. Now back to our episode. What was happening for you as your world was whirling around because you are a mom? Like, what is going on for you internally?
Honestly, like I think I wasn't even there. Like I think I was so dissociated and just not in myself. Like I genuinely truly forget a lot of parts of my life from the past 5 years or so. Yeah, I don't know. I was so consumed in like just not being able to function and a lot of anger and resentment of like, losing my career. Like I had been with my job at Fortino's for like 10 years. So I had lost like a really core part of my world.
And was that because of COVID?
I left because when I went back from mat leave, it was really hard to juggle all the hours with keeping up with laundry and, trying to be a good partner, whatever that means to people. And I just couldn't keep up. In the morning, I was waking up crying, thinking about having to go to work. And it had nothing to do with like, being sad about leaving my kid at home, which I think a lot of women go through when they go back to work. It wasn't a sentimental thing like that for me. I think it was just
Survival.
I just like, yeah, I just like couldn't leave the house. I was scared all the time. I think honestly, maybe I was just afraid all the time. And so doing anything even minor was scary to me all the time.
Wow, yeah, okay. So after maternity leave, you end up leaving your job. And how are you surviving financially at this point?
Oh, because I had already started my wedding planning business really when I had left my job too. So I had a lot from that as well. My first year of weddings, I did something like 30 clients, which is quite a lot. And then the next year was even more. So while my life was simultaneously falling apart, it was also growing
You're also
exponentially.
building a business.
And it was more than I thought it would be, which was so beautiful and great. But I couldn't really show up for it in the way I wanted to because I was dealing with so much. And last year, I had a huge nervous breakdown and like I couldn't take on clients. I promised myself if I got through my last leg of clients that I wasn't going to do it to myself again. So making it through all of that was a lot too.
Okay, so let's talk about, because you also told me that in this period of time you had gained 100 pounds or something in this relationship, which is a significant amount of weight. And I think, I talked to you before we started recording that I've heard the story a lot of women in bad relationships where the weight of the relationship actually does manifest in weight gain. So talk to us about how do you finally, because you said you had a breakdown last year, that breakdown, was that before you had finally gotten completely out of this relationship, or did that all happen at the same time?
I think it all really overlapped with each other. Like I think at that point I had just woken up and decided that I was done doing things for other people and that I was worth, finding myself and showing up for me. And that included my son a lot of times too. Like I'm a great mom in my way, but I definitely had to find a balance that made sense for who I was as a person so that I didn't lose my mind because it was just a lot of being there for other people. The hours I was working with the weddings weren't healthy for me. It was affecting my mental health a lot as well because then, I wasn't sleeping almost at all. Like I would go 3 or 4 days without sleeping. I wasn't eating anymore because I was just so stressed. I didn't really have time to eat. Yeah, it was crazy.
Now, you said that you had been diagnosed with bipolar. Were you on medication for your bipolar?
I've been on and off of medication my whole life. When I was younger, I think I spent a lot of time denying that I was sick and I didn't want to accept it. So then I was always like, oh, I can stay above it. And I did for a long time in my early 20s. I was very successful. I was really good at my job. I was very well off financially. Like I was doing really good for myself. I had a healthy routine. I was in good shape, went to the gym regularly. I was in a good spot. But then after I had my son, it spun me out. I couldn't keep up with it, and getting back to a proper baseline was hard. So on and off medications all the time. I would crash, go back on them, feel better, come off them, crash, and just that whole cycle.
Okay, so when were you able to, I like the word release, release yourself from this relationship with your now ex? And tell us what happened after that.
So that November of a couple of years ago, I want to say it was like 2021, it must have been. I just woke up and decided that I was done and told him that I was leaving. And then almost immediately I started losing weight. But then I spun out in other toxic ways too. I spent a lot of time in back seats that I should not have been in, which was healing in other ways for myself. And I'm not ashamed of anything that I did, but it definitely changed my trajectory for a good year. So after I went through that dark path of, you know, going on all these dates and seeing all these different men and making choices that weren't healthy for me, and I went to Mexico for 2 weeks by myself and like left the resort with some like one of the people that worked there, and like just like really really bad decisions.
So you went
uh,
to Mexico by yourself, and I'm assuming your son was staying with your mom.
yeah.
And so was this sort of your way of I'm going to go to Mexico and I'm going to rejuvenate myself? I mean, was that sort of the goal
I
of the
think
trip?
escapism was my goal. Like I just wanted
Yeah.
to like I didn't want anybody to know who I was. I didn't want people to talk to me. Like I went through a really big part of like wanting to be hidden for a long time. And so going to Mexico was a really big part of that, and it was really good for me. And then when I came back and started into the karaoke world, which was almost immediately after I came back from Mexico, I started sitting by myself initially, but then after about 4 months, I started to warm up to people, but especially after I met my current partner, Peter, there. So after I
How
met
did
him, then I really wanted to be around everybody because he was always there.
how did you get into karaoke?
Well,
And
then
what
what's
about your wedding planning business? Did you let that
oh
go?
my God, my wedding planning business.
Okay.
So my wedding planning business, like I mentioned, was growing really, really well. And I think it just got too big for what I was able to. And then I didn't have a great team. Like I would have really good girls, but because I couldn't stay, they needed hours that they could rely on. And I couldn't give that to them. So then I had this big company that was doing great with no staff. And COVID produced all of its own kinds of challenges, all with the wedding planning. And because I was so sick in my own head with, spiraling out from my marriage, I just started telling myself, like, I stopped taking on clients and really tried to get away from working in the wedding world. It's not as nice as people think it is. They think it's really beautiful and it has a lot of beautiful moments, but it has a lot of really not beautiful moments too.
I can imagine being a wedding planner would be incredibly stressful. First of all, you've got the bride and the groom and the bride, just the stress of it. And then you have, or the bride and the bride and the groom and the groom, right? I mean, but, just the stress of all of the details of a wedding planner and of the people who are getting married. I mean, it's a very charged event. And so I would not think it would be, I would think that that would be a very difficult, actually, profession to be a wedding planner.
Yeah, and like it's really similar to funerals in a lot of ways, which I did too. And with the funerals, the thing that I really liked was that it was genuine. When people are sad and they're grumpy and they're angry, I like those people so much more than when people are faking being happy. I would have rather have
Mm.
somebody crying on my shoulder, like going through something really stressful and I can carry them through that than a lot of the forced speeches and toxicity that I saw in weddings.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking when you said funeral to a wedding and then flowers, I was like, I actually understand that progression. Like, it
Yeah,
actually makes sense to me.
yes, I like chaos. That has a really big part of who I am. So when your camera was going all off earlier and you were losing your speech a little bit, I was like, oh yes, that's perfect. Like I love that in people because it's real and it's not faked. And yeah, I just love those moments in people when it's real. And I don't like when people sit there and they pretend to be happy. I don't think that sad stuff is bad. Like I enjoy all of it.
Yeah, the authenticity of us showing up as the human, the flawed human. I call it the perfectly imperfect flawed human beings that we are.
Hmm.
And and I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your chaotic, messy, beautiful life with us too. And so, okay, so now you're getting into karaoke. You have ended your relationship at this point with,
Oh, like hard, hard gone. Yeah. Like
okay,
for almost a year at that point.
perfect. So now you're in the karaoke world. And I really want to hear about this because I think
That's
that when we really feel like we are completely alone and standing naked in the world and so vulnerable, I always think about that as the invitation to walk into the dark places of who we are and kind of get to know ourselves in a much different way, that real authentic way, as you just so eloquently talked about. So do you feel like, well, I'll just ask the question instead of leading you. Tell me what happened for you in the world of karaoke, because I think you talked about sort of this progression of sitting alone by yourself, not really wanting to be seen, which is interesting when you think about being on the karaoke stage where you're literally the star of the show, right? And all eyes are on you. Talk to us about that process.
I think with karaoke, I think I did feel really anonymous because when I was there, I wasn't bringing my toxic attributes. I wasn't bringing dates there. I wasn't bringing the toxic version of Emilie. And so I did feel anonymous. I when I'm singing, I feel like I'm away from people and I'm not in myself. And I think that that's why when at the end people start clapping, it's kind of weird for me because I think at that point it's like, oh God, like they saw that. Like I feel very vulnerable, like almost like I was caught naked. I'm like, oh my God, they saw me have that emotion when I sang that note. Because everything I sing has a real meaning. And it tied a lot into meeting my partner there and us going to karaoke all the time. So I first start going, and the more I start going, the less time I was spending doing unhealthy things. And the more time I think I started feeling worth it and wanting to be heard and talking to people. And it would be like really small things, like in the beginning, when I would get off the stage, there would be one person's face. And I always really loved to look at how he smiled because he was just so genuinely happy. And it was just so cute and so him. And then, this other person, there would be things about, that guy that I really loved. And oh, this girl does this thing. So I started to notice really beautiful things in people again, which I think being in the wedding industry, I lost that for a long time. And I didn't like a lot of people for a long time. So karaoke, I started to like people again. And through that, I think I started to appreciate myself because I would see people that had things that I didn't like in me and I still loved them. And so then I felt like, oh, I can still love me too. Then I met my partner and I wouldn't say like right away, like maybe we said hello a couple times from wherever. Like it wasn't really anything. We weren't into each other really at first. But then it was just one night, the two of us, we just sat and talked and we really saw each other and we heard each other. And I was there with another guy that was like trying to date me, but I wasn't with him, but he was interested. And so me talking to my partner at the table with him, he pulls me away and I fall in love with him in front of this other guy and pretty much in front of everybody at karaoke. And from then we spent every night together from like November until now, 5 nights a week. Karaoke
Wow.
is 5+ hours. So it was a full-time job. Like, and a lot of it had to do with seeing him. And based on how our night went, or the things that we would say, or the things that I would think about, it would channel all of my new songs. So, okay, I felt this tonight. Oh, that song goes with it perfectly. I would obsess and I'd listen to these songs. And then when I would sing them, they meant more. And I don't know, then people really started noticing me a lot then. And my voice, I guess, was starting to get noticed more, which was nice. And
Well,
now we're together.
I'm good. That's wonderful. I'm so excited. So you guys are together, like you're living together. You're in.
Yeah, he's moving in like 2 months.
Oh, great. Congratulations. But I know everyone is, well, maybe some people aren't wondering this, but I'm wondering this. And I know I asked you this before we started recording, but can you talk to us about the difference between karaoke and just being a singer, like at pubs and stuff or doing gigs? What is the difference?
To me, it's you're connecting with people in a much more personal way. So, for example, there's one person that sings this one song, and now every time I hear that song, I hear it how they sing it. Even if they don't sing it perfectly, there's something about the way they embraced it. They were quirky. Maybe they make a facial expression when they say a certain word, and they're all like my own little personal celebrities. Like I love all of them so dearly, and yeah, that's the best part of karaoke. And people learn how to cheer for each other. We're like a family. It's really really nice.
But you're a professional, but it's the same as being a professional singer, right?
Not exactly. Like it's not a live band, so some people think like karaoke is like cheating. But for the things that I like, it works because to me, it's magic in the nothing. Like,
Do
oh,
you
you're
make, can
like
you make a
her.
living? Do you make a living doing karaoke?
If the way I'm gonna do it, yes.
So what does that mean, the way you're going to do it? Like, because I'm just so enthralled by the idea of being a professional karaoke singer.
I like to flip industries. So when I started in the wedding industry, I changed the way people did things. When I was in the funeral industry, I changed the way people did things. When I was in the flower industry, I changed what people did. And so for karaoke now, I have plans that are going to change the way we think about karaoke. And I would really like to see it be more interactive and more personable instead of people just coming in and dropping their name in a hat. Like I want it to feel more like an experience that people are being seen in that moment.
I
So
just,
I don't want to give too much away, but I want to make things happen with karaoke that will do that.
so this is what you're working on.
Yeah. This I feel like this is all I can work on right now. All I want to do is sing all the time.
Is it okay? I want to watch you. Do you have clips and stuff on your Instagram?
I don't have an Instagram. I know. See, like I'm a really weird person.
It's not weird, but
I started to take more videos and stuff now, and so I do have some that I can share with you. And I did start an Instagram page for what I'm going to be doing, but I haven't turned it on yet. Like people can't access it yet because I'm still posting videos to it.
okay.
But I can send it to you today, and I can send you the little website as I'm working on it, and you can get a glimpse into the future.
I would love to. I mean, and I know that we can't give a teaser. Can we give a teaser in the show notes, or are you keeping it on lockdown until you're ready for the big release?
It'll almost be like a game show. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Okay, all right.
Contest without the competition. Something like that. Like it'll be a
It's
recurring thing.
it's very intriguing. So tell us then, around because I know that, getting from where you were and where you are today was not a hop, skip, and a jump, right? It was a lot of hard work. And share with me and our listeners, how did you get from there to where you are now? I know you talked about your mom and that you had some support, but how did you pick up all of those pieces and go through this transformation? Did you get help? You said you had a breakdown. Did you end up seeking therapy? How I mean, because now you're just like this radiant, beautiful woman who has all of this excitement, and I can see it in your face. I can hear it in your voice. So obviously you're in this amazing place now. How did you get here?
I don't know if I've reached my destination. I don't know if I
We
ever
never
will.
do.
Exactly. Like, I'm always just a work in progress because, man, I have some weeks. Like earlier this week, I was really, really self-conscious and I was really struggling with all those like body things that people do, like, well, that I do in my problems. But I think just one day I was just done with it. And I really do wish that I had sought better help, but I don't think I could have. I think if I did, it would have caused a lot of other problems for me too. I spent a lot of time like just alone and being sad in bed and, hiding my pain through my work and working crazy hours and, going out on all these dates and spending my money and just doing things that were impulsive and not good for me because I was in a manic phase in my life and I wasn't able to keep up with that because there was just too much chaos. I started having more thoughts that were good. And when I would have bad thoughts, I just wouldn't leave room for them. I would make myself so busy that I didn't have time to lay there and wallow in myself at night. And I think karaoke had a lot to do with that because it was a safe place that I could go at any time. It didn't matter if I brushed my hair, it didn't matter if I had makeup on, if my armpits weren't shaved. I could just be me, and that was okay. And you see that with everybody there. You go to the bars, and I think for a lot of people, they want to turn their eye to sad people in the world. But you go to bars, and there's a lot of unhappy people there, but we're all together in it. And that's the best part. Being okay in my sadness is what got me through, making friends with it.
That's a quotable quote that you became friends with your sadness. I think that talked about this many times on this podcast that I do a lot of work, obviously, in the grief and loss lane. And one thing that I experienced myself after my brother's death, really being in that super dark place, that it's very counterintuitive to lean into our sadness and to lean into our grief, because I think for many people, and this was also true for me, if we lean too deeply into it, we might never find our way back. Like somehow we might drown in the depth of our despair and our sadness. And even though intellectually I knew as a therapist that wasn't true, right? Because we bring people into those places for healing. But when it came to me, I'm like, oh no, and that's what my writing was about, really writing into the nerve of the darkest part of that experience. And when we lean into our deep sadness, that is really where we actually find relief, because we are human beings who have emotions. And if we keep trying to tamp those down, our energy goes places, right? And not always very good places. It can manifest in physical illness. It can manifest in mental health issues. And so I think that that is just so beautiful the way that you put that, because I don't think people necessarily think about becoming friends with their sadness and their grief.
To me,
And
it's bad, right? It's not a bad thing to be sad. It's just an experience. We're all people. It's genuine, right? It goes back to the funeral homes and all of
yes,
that.
yes, it's an experience. And I think that we sometimes want to pathologize our sadness, and sometimes it can turn pathological, right? We can get into very deep, deep depression where we need help, whether that's medication, therapy, a combination of the two, whatever that looks like for people. But it is acknowledging it and allowing the space for it in our lives. And then whatever we need to make that space in our life. Because I also do believe that we need support, a support system in our life, and trusting our stories with people who are trustworthy and can hold that space and that love for us without judgment. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank,
That was really beautiful.
thank you.
So, what else would you like to say and share with our listeners that we haven't talked about? Because I know that we've been talking, believe it or not, close to an hour, but it it feels like, that you have just this incredible, you use the word chaos, this incredible chaotic story, but sitting here with you now, I am feeling such a gentleness and a calmness from you. And I'm just wondering if you have any other words of wisdom you'd like to share to people out there who may be in the throes of their own struggle.
I really hope that people realize that they're allowed to be seen, and you're worth getting out of dark situations. Even if you think it won't get better, it's better than just staying in one place that's terrible. Like, just keep moving forward, take that chance on better. If you don't go for it, you're not going to get it. So I just want people to live their lives, be themselves, be all the quirkiness that they want to be, sing the silliest songs and miss all the notes and all the words. I love that about people.
And let themselves be seen. Okay, so I always end on two questions. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The first one is, what does self-love mean to you? What does it look like in your world?
I think showing up for yourself. If you're feeling really bad one day and you're feeling down and you don't want to do something, you've got to show up for your tomorrow. It's not about you today, it's about you tomorrow. And just putting yourself before everyone, no matter what kind of judgment you get for it.
Thank you. And my last question, finish the sentence for me. Hope is
Everlasting. Like, if you have hope, you can do anything, right? The hope doesn't stop. You just have hope, it doesn't end. Everlasting.
everlasting. Hope is everlasting. That's another quotable quote. Oh my gosh, Emilie, I want to just thank you so much. You're delightful. I mean, I find myself just sort of giddy actually talking to you. I can feel that I don't know, just that fun energy. And I'm so happy for you that you have found a partner that you feel like brings you joy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope everyone finds they're happy in themselves too. Doesn't have to be with someone else. Just
Right.
finding your happy.
It starts here, right? You couldn't have found the part. Yeah. So I want to thank all my listeners for tuning in today. I hope you guys take a nugget with you that can help you on your own journey. I love you guys and thank you for showing up week after week. And we'll see you here next week. Bye for now.
Thanks.